please share your thoughts in comments and like this video. A second-year boy is on a class trip and he's planning to confess to a girl whom he has liked since his first year. Suddenly, he is nudged by a girl sitting beside him who asks him whether he is getting nervous. She wonders if he is getting cold feet because she knows the guy too well to judge by his facial expressions that he's actually terrified. The guy describes that girl as a pure soul that doesn't understand a guy's heart, who is his childhood friend and technically his assistant in this big operation. Now the girl on whom he has a crush is among the few beautiful girls in the city, and her name is Shirayuki Yui. The guy explains to his childhood friend that this is his only chance, so he has to be very precarious. His childhood friend gets a little annoyed as she is helping him for free. The guy immediately apologizes to her and promises that he won't act smug anymore. The bus suddenly collides with some transparent magical circles, and the whole bus goes through some wild tremors, making the students think that they are going through some earthquake. Their teacher, Minami-sensei, tries to calm them down and instructs everyone to hold the handles in front. Suddenly, the bus enters a strange historical place and halts abruptly. Our main protagonist looks around and wonders whether they are in Japan. A knight orders everyone in the bus to come out, and the main lead is astounded to see a humongous distorted creature holding the bus in one position. He wonders if that creature is a robot. It is revealed that the name of the main protagonist of this story is Yuta and his childhood friend's name is Nagisa, and they both assure each other that those people might not cause them any harm. A strange man appears and apologizes for their rude behavior. He then introduces himself as the manager of the Summoning Center Balmore. He then reveals the shocking news that the students have entered another world. A panic-stricken Minami-sensei asks the manager about the exact situation they are in. The man gives them another shock bolt by saying that they have summoned them here to sell them to other people. When the students are puzzled, the manager explains that this world uses ancient tools called mechas. Civil engineering, construction, deliveries, and many others use these special devices. However, they require the use of a special type of energy and a link. The manager reveals the name of this world, which is Farba, and adds that it has few people who have that rare energy. For this reason, they don't have enough pilots at all. He then comes to the point that Earthlings have that rare energy called Ludia value. Through calculations and research, they have found out that the Earthlings have an abundance of Ludia value. For this reason, they have summoned the students to Farba. When Minami-sensei protests, she is brutally pinned down by one of the knights, but the manager reasons with them that the status of such pilots is quite high in Farba, so they will be enjoying a luxurious lifestyle. The manager advises them to take some rest and pray that their Ludia value is up to the mark, as they will be sold tomorrow. The following night, Yuta's friend, Haranishi, talked with him and wondered what Ludia value was, but Yuta was surprised about how Haranishi adapted quickly. Haranishi wanted to have a high value to get better treatment. He then asked another student named Mikake. The latter didn't believe in Ludia value and thought that the manager was tricking them, but he believed Shirayuki would have the highest value out of all of them. She's the class topper, and that's why he believed that she had higher chance. The nonchalant Yuta didn't have a single lead, but he also believed Shirayuki has the highest value. The next morning, the students are all queued for the Ludia value inspection. They have to pass through a special machine to which a measuring gauge is attached. Firstly, Iwanami from the soccer club gets inspected, and the gauge shows his Ludia value of 12,000. An inspector is fairly satisfied with Iwanami's value, but still wishes that someone who surpasses 20 might show up. Yuta guesses that passing the tank milestone is termed as a Highlander, and someone having 20 is called a double Highlander, which is very rare. A bespectacled student strikes the value of 29,000, and the inspector comments that the boy is so close to being a triple Highlander. Soon, it's Haranishi's turn, and he manages to strike a mere 3,300, followed by others whose value is under 5,000. Then it's Shirayuki's turn, and Viola manages to strike a value of a whopping 36,000. The surrounding men begin to cheer, as if a festival is going around for landing on a triple Highlander. It's Nagisa's turn, and she manages to strike a decent value of 6,500, which is termed as a Halflander, and until now, only 5 people have been able to pass the 5,000 mark. Nagisa shows Yuta the sign of victory, and Yuta signals her back. Finally, it's Yuta's turn, and he's very much looking forward to getting himself inspected, but to everyone's astonishment and a great deal of disappointment at his end, Yuta manages to strike the value of a mere 2. The inspector checks the whole equipment and confirms the Ludia value of Yuta. Being only 2, he broke the record of the lowest Earthling. Later, The auction of the Earthlings begins, and firstly, Mikike bearing the value of 12,000 stands for bidding, since he's a Highlander, so the bidding starts with 10 million gold. Yuta is amazed to see the whole procedure because he has never seen an auction before. Later, Mikike is sold to the Valkya Empire for a whopping 160 million gold. One by one, the students get auctioned, and poor Yuta feels that he will be separated from his friends, and now they will not be able to see each other anymore. He ponders how the circumstances took a turn and a happy school trip became a never-to-return excursion to another world. Soon, the auction for the night's biggest pearl, Shirayuki, begins, and she is sold to the Erisha Empire for an unbelievable 12 billion gold. Nagisa is also sold to the Umbrea Empire for 20 million gold. A helpless Yuta watches his friends depart as he doesn't want the school trip to turn out this way. Oh, how he had thought he would confess to Shirayuki. And then comes the despicable auction of Yuta, who according to the bidder isn't sellable, but according to the rules, they will have to put a price on his as well. The bidder scornfully announces if anyone is ready to buy Yuta as a souvenir. Because he is completely useless, some people laugh at him. Some wonder whether a Rudia value of 2 is actually possible. The buyers chuckle in disdain to his friend's chagrin. The bidder is ready to accept even a piece of gold for Yuta when suddenly a menacing voice echoes saying that he is ready to buy that useless Yuta, but he would pay only 2 walnuts for him. Poor Yuta is shut inside a cage, like carriage, and taken away. Mandasi is deeply anxious for her dear friend, but is ushered towards her luxurious carriage. Yuta is roughly shoved inside a bare cabin where other worn-out individuals are also imprisoned. The man mentions harshly to Yuta that from now onwards, this shack will be his home. Yuta asks about food, and the latter says that he has to wait till the next day. A girl having messed up hair and tattered clothes comes up to Yuta asking if he is hungry. Poor Yuta realizes that he has been sold into slavery, which unfortunately exists in Farba as well. He was worried about the fate of Nagisa and Shirayuki. He wonders in horror what will happen to him in the future. Meanwhile, one of the knights guarding the outer gate of Farba asks another whether the news about someone having Rudia value of 2 is true. The other knight affirms and discloses that he was keeping a close watch at the back. He witnessed the needle on the gauge make a full swing before resting on parameter 2. The first knight defies the fact that there's no way that a Rudia value measurer can measure up to 100,000. The second knight affirms and adds that, with that kind of Rudia, Yuta cannot even activate a mecha. It can be seen that an enormous robot has been activated and stares at its surroundings treacherously. At the shack, a little girl named Nanami offers a scrap of bread to Yuta. When an old lady points out that it is her emergency food, Nanami blurts out that she knows that being hungry is suffering. Yuta is speechless, but doesn't accept the bread and says that Nanami's kindness is enough for him. Nanami tells him not to be reckless because it is not known whether they will be getting food the next day or not. She reasons that they get a meal every 3 days, so he must eat the scrap of bread. Yuta is unable to understand what a small child like Nanami is doing in a deserted place like this. When Nanami insists a lot, Yuta decides to split the scrap of bread in half, as according to him, food tastes better when shared. The following night, Yuta is unable to sleep due to the harsh cold weather and hard flooring, and like others, he's given a flimsy piece of cloth in the name of a blanket that barely covers his body. He can see poor Nanami shivering with cold, and his heart fills with sheer pity for an unfortunate child like her. As soon as the dawn breaks, their astute master yells at them to wake up, and Yuta feels sleepy as he barely slept through the night. He is still thinking about Nanami, whether she has been living like this her whole life. He wonders whether she is going to die like this. He clenches his fist because he really wants to do something for that helpless child. After the end of the day, Yuta is given a piece of bread along with a glass of water, and Nanami advises Yuta that it's better than nothing. He inquires Nanami about how she ended up in a place like this. She replies that she was sold by her mother. Yuta regrets his question as he knows that he messed up big time. However, Nanami continues that her mother got a whole month's worth of money for selling her, and Nanami is okay with this. The following night, Yuta can hear Nanami sobbing silently. Yuta's heart fills with remorse, and he apologizes to her for making her remember something sad. However, between hiccups, Nanami reasons that at least her family has full stomachs because of her. Yuta hugs her dearly, and then in the coming days, Nanami and Yuta become closer. One day, an excited Nanami shows him a ragdoll she found by the mansion. and Yuta is delighted to see her glowing with happiness. However, that brute of a man barges in from behind and picks up Nanami in order to thrash her for stealing that doll from the mansion. Yuta angrily intervenes and takes the blame for picking up that doll near the mansion. The man begins beating Yuta instead for lying. A distraught Nanami reaches out for Yuta, who is still smiling despite having a bleeding nose and other injuries. He apologizes to Nanami that he was not able to save her doll, but that noble kid hugs him dearly and says that Yuta is more important to her. The following night, the master tells there is no food for the day, so they have to live without it. Yuta springs up in anger, but notices that the man didn't lock the door behind him. A woman points out that the key to the door is the Rudia value. It's said to not open to anybody having a Rudia value below 300. Nanami adds that only the people under the Rudia value of 100 are living here. Yuta feels sorry for those worn out people who are forced to live a miserable life like that. Soon, he is able to open the door easily to everyone's surprise. He asks Nanami whether she wants to accompany him. While escaping from this dreadful place, the woman astonishingly asks Yuta about his Rudia value, and he proudly announces that it's 2. Yuta roams around the city holding Nanami's hand. He then remarks about the size of the city being so big and that they should look for work around here. He promises Nanami that he will provide her with adequate food to fill her stomach. Soon Yuta asks many shopkeepers to provide him with some work. However, no one wants to hire him because of his menial Rudia value. After much toil, he reaches the harbor and asks the man in charge to provide him with some work. The man thankfully says that his Rudia value didn't matter here. He explains that the work is quite easy. All he has to do is to make the boat move. For this, Yuta will be getting 2 meals per day and 3 gold pieces per trip. He then shows Nanami and Yuta the place where they will be sleeping, and Yuta finds a wooden cabin where some men were dozing off. The in-charge advises Yuta to ask his co-workers if he has any further questions. One of the men shows him a giant gear spin of the boat and says that their job is to steer it. He reasons that it's very easy if one has a high Rudia value. At least, that is what he is told. But over here, everyone's value is below 100. The man tells him that they will sleep and eat over here. So when Yuta asks him if they cannot go outside, the man clearly tells him that this is a slave ship and literally shocks Yuta. Soon, the anchor was pulled out of water, and the workers are summoned to prepare themselves for departure. Soon each worker holds one end of the gear spin. To Yuta, the gear looks pretty heavy to move, but he also grabs an end of the gear. As soon as he touches the gear, a strange kind of power emerges from Yuta and gets transferred to the gear. It rotated too fast and hit the back of Yuta. The tight and heavy spin gear begins to rotate so furiously that it baffles everyone. The boat gets a great start to everyone's delight. They had managed to reach their destination much earlier. The owner of the ship is so delighted that he decides to pay 10 pieces of gold to each of the workers. And not only that, the workers are free to go outside. However, Yuta finds this kind of strange because he thought that it would give a chance for all workers to run away. However, a man tells him that even if they get freed, where would they go with such menial Rudia values, as the ship is the best way for people like them to get square meals. Yuta asks Nanami if she wants to stay on the ship, but the little girl insists that she wants to stay with Yuta. He warns her that she might starve to death, but even then, Nanami doesn't want to leave his side. Meanwhile, in a lavish mansion, a young girl tries to be friendly with Nagisa. However, Nagisa is very depressed, so she is unable to even meet her gaze. The girl introduces herself as Linnell, the second princess of the kingdom of Amuria. When Linnell notices that Nagisa doesn't seem interested and looks very sad, the nice girl assures her that even though she has been sold as a slave, Nagisa has her assurance that she will be treated like royalty. Linnell explains that riders with high Rudia value are always treated well, and in a small country like hers, she will no doubt be pampered. Nagisa in turn asks her that the ones having low value are mistreated, Linnell affirms, and remembers that there was someone with an awfully low Rudia value at the auction. She is pointing towards Yuta, of course. Nagisa wonders what happened to him and expresses her anxiousness towards Yuta. Linnell found the reason for Nagisa's sadness. Nagisa couldn't control herself and blurts out that she had loved him for a very long time. Linnell kneels down in front of a weeping Nagisa and tries to console her. However, Nagisa embarrassingly disengages herself because, after all, a princess is kneeling in front of her. Seeing her like that, Linnell hugged her, which surprised Nagisa. Linnell vows that she will find the boy for her, and maybe they can buy him back. A ray of hope flashes on Nagisa's face. When Linnell tells her to leave everything on her, Later, the ruler of Amiria and Linnell's father welcomes Nagisa heartily, and his name is Majuni. Linnell urges her father to smile as Nagisa is really nervous around him. Linnell is trying too hard to make Majuni smile in an appropriate way to Nagisa's amusement. Soon, a little girl comes along and Linnell introduces her to Nagisa. The little girl's name is Himari, who may be the third princess, but is a wild one. But Himari denied that. Linnell inquires Himari about Yukiha, and Himari suggests that Yukiha might be at her usual place. Linnell decides to give Nagisa a tour of that place. Nagisa was surprised to see many robots there. To one such robot, Linnell refers to it as Yukiha and asks her to come out of it. The torso of the robot begins to split open and a girl comes out of it introducing herself as Yukiha, the first princess. Yukiha checks out Nagisa and exclaims that she is the Halflander. Soon, she comes to the point and says that they must check out her mecha. Afterwards, they come in front of a magnificent robot, and Yukiha calls it Magic Mecha Raspberry. Yukiha explains that Raspberry requires a Rudia value of 5,000 to work with a maximum input of 12,000 to work. Raspberry has a Blake armor and an A-rank power. Yukiha claims that Raspberry is their country's strongest mecha. Linnell explains Yukiha, having the highest Rudia value, wasn't able to operate it. That's why they needed a rider with a Rudia value of at least 5,000. Poor Nagisa frets over the possibility that she might be used in wars. Yukiha places her hand on Nagisa's shoulders that it's true other countries might be doing that, but Amuraya is a peaceful country and doesn't use the mecha for wars to her relief. Meanwhile, Yuta and Nanami are roaming around in a market where they are looking for some clothes for Nanami. Nanami also glances at the tattered shirt Yuta is wearing and says that she is not good at selecting clothes because she has never selected anything in her life. Soon, he selects clothes, and they pay 2 gold and 20 silver coins to the shopkeeper. Yuta has started to get the hang of this world's currency. In total, Nanami and Yuta have 17 gold coins and 8 silver pieces. He finds out that 100 silver coins equals 1 gold coin, and a big piece of bread costs around 50 silver. He tells Nanami that they have enough to rent a room at an inn where Nanami can clean up and adorn new clothes. Soon, they rent a room with a small bath, and both Nanami and Yuta hop in the bath together. It is then Yuta realizes that Nanami is older than he thought. So he asks Nanami her real age and is shocked to find that she is 14. If it was Japan, he would have been reported. To his embarrassment, he asks Nanami to take a bath all by herself, but she insists that they bathe together. She even offers that they should both live together forever, and Yuta agrees because he feels that Nanami might be thinking of him as an older brother. He feels sorry for her because he is the only family Nanami has. He promises to himself that he will look after her food and her studies. Soon, Nanami comes in front of him, all sparkling clean, with her hair combed properly and her dress adorned neatly. Yuta happily pats her head and thinks that he will start by improving their living conditions. He went outside to find a new job. Many days have passed, and poor Yuta is upset because he still hasn't been able to find a job. The only problem being his Rudia score is 2. He splits a piece of bread into half and gives 1 half to Nanami. He apologizes to her that they will be living like this for a while. Nanane assures him she is fine as long as she is with Yuta. Suddenly, a stranger in prim clothes comes along and asks Yuta whether he is looking for work. He has a job that pays 50 gold pieces per month. Yuta was surprised to hear that. He knows that earning money is not easy, and he remembered his previous job, where he was almost made a slave again after escaping. He then asks the man about the nature of the job. The latter replies he has a daughter, and he wants Yuta to talk to her. Both Yuta and Nanami stay expressionless, as if in deep thought. The man asks Yuta dejectedly whether he is not interested. Since it was such a simple job, Yuta decided to give it a try. The man is grateful and introduces himself as Belfast. He tells Yuta that he looks forward to his cooperation in the future. Later, Yuta and Nanami meet Lord Belfast's daughter, Falma, who seems, well, a little different from others. She is a human, of course, but her ears and nose resemble that of an animal. Belfast explains that this is the half-race phenomenon, a kind of curse that Falma is going through. He reasons as a noble of this country, he has many enemies. It's almost like someone, somewhere, has a deep grudge against their family. Belfast was worried for his daughter's future. When Yuta tries to put forward his hand for a handshake, Falma fidgets uncomfortably. Still, Yuta introduces himself and Nanami to Falma, and again thrusts his hand towards Falma. The girl ponders for a brief moment and then hesitantly returns his gesture. Encouraged, Yuta says that from now onwards, they all will be friends, and Falma can talk to him about anything at any time. Yuta guesses that because of her current appearance, Falma has always stayed in her room. She rarely talks to anyone outside the family, let alone having friends. Yuta feels that Falma is justified in being wary of strangers. Soon, Nanami grabs Falma's hands and invites her to play outside. She literally drags Falma out of her bed, which surprises her completely. Falma asks Nanami whether she really wants to play with her and isn't scared of her. However, Nanami in turn questions her that why would anybody be scared of Falma? Falma purses her lips at the unexpected response. Lord Belfast is greatly relieved, and Yuta is in complete awe of Nanami. Lord Belfast explains that before them, he brought someone here, but when he showed them his daughter, they insensitively screamed, "Monster," and ran away. Lord Belfast thanks Yuta for coming along. He then arranges a room for Yuta upstairs, along with meals. He requests them to use their house facilities as they please. Since that day, Nanami and Yuta have been living in Lord Belfast's mansion. For one, they have been having good food and warm beds, and they spent most of their time playing with Falma. A month later, Falma and Nanami have already become sisters. One way, they were playing a game, and Yuta was it, but he was too tired to chase them as the kids were too fast for him. That's when Yuta spots a magnanimous mecha placed in a spare room. He was mesmerized by that sight. Falma noticed it and explained that her father bought it a long time ago. After it was dug up, a triple Highlander tried to activate it, but nothing happened, as something seemed to be broken inside it. For this reason, Lord Belfast has bought it as a collector's item. Yuta is surprised because mecha was actually dug, and he wonders why they don't make these machines. Falma reasons that the core of these machines cannot be reproduced with current magical technology, and that's why they dig up these magical machines from ancient civilizations and use them to manufacture everything except the core. Yuta is impressed by Falma's knowledge, and the latter smugly explains that she likes learning about the machines. Falma reasons that machines fascinate her. They simply can't make it from the scrath with their current magic technology. The fact they are generated by an unknown power attracts her. Yuta tells her that it doesn't matter to him whether it will work or not because his Ludia level is only 2. Falma is taken aback because she has never heard of a value so low. Her own value is 7,800, and it seems that she is not satisfied with it. While they are talking, Nanmi is curious about their conversation. Falma wonders about Nanmi's Ludia value. Yuta predicts that it must be very low since she was unable to open the shack door. However, Nanami says that she never touched that door. Yuta ponders that there might be a possibility that Nanami's Ludia value can be higher. Yuta narrates that sometime later, he had a chance to measure Nanami's Ludia value. Lord Belfast had hired contractors to measure the value, and it turned out that Nanami is a triple Highlander with a value of 32,000. Everyone is shocked with surprise, and Belfast tells Nanami that she will be treated well wherever she goes. He offers to introduce her to the royalty of the country, but Nanami chooses to stay with Yuta and Falma, and Mr. Belfast exclaims that Falma is lucky to have a friend like Nanami. Elsewhere, a strange girl ponders how they have landed in a strange world and led to a bizarre auction, and now everyone in the class has been divided and gone their separate ways. She was especially worried for Yuta. That girl arrives at an extravagant castle. It is revealed that the unknown girl is Shirayuki Yui. As soon as she enters the main entrance, the man accompanying her instructs the soldier to pay respect to their new triple Highlander, and the troops salute her at once. Shirayuki is feeling uncomfortable because she thinks that she is not that great and doesn't deserve such great treatment. When the Emperor finds out that the much-awaited triple Highlander is a mere teenager, he is very much taken aback. The man asks Shirayuki to bow in front of the king, but the king forbids her to do so, as he feels Shirayuki is a special individual. He continues, she is the 5th triple Highlander in his country, and by using her power, she will prove her allegiance to him. The man courteously ushers her towards her room, but before that, he wants to show her the mecha which she will be operating. Soon he brings her to the room full of elegant mechas, all lined up. However, the man reveals that those are all ordinary mechas, and the specialized mechas for advanced riders have been placed somewhere else. Soon, he leads her behind the hangar door, where a magnanimous mecha is placed especially designed for a triple Highlander like Shirayuki. The name of the mecha is Elvira, and it requires a Ludia score of 30,000 and a maximum power of 3 million. Its armor and mobility ranks are SS. Suddenly, a dashing young named Yuta arrives and remarks that Elvira is indeed a terrifying mecha. The young man and Shirayuki exchange pleasantries. Yuta tells her that, like her, he was also sold into this world 5 years ago. Since he is also Japanese like her, he tells her to ask him if she doesn't understand anything. Soon someone tells Yuto that his mecha has been repaired. Yuto then takes his leave, as he was summoned. The man accompanying Shirayuki tells her that Yuto is a quintuple Highlander and is the strongest rider in the continent with a Rudia value of 57,000. Shirayuki is amazed to meet a fellow Japanese person and the strongest man in the world. Because of Yuto, this country, Elysia, is said to be the strongest on the continent. He discloses that, in that regard, he has more authority than the emperor himself. The man whispers in her ear that there is nothing wrong with having a cordial relationship with Yuto. Shirayuki was shocked to hear that. The man tells her, indifferently, he will have someone to show her how to ride a mecha later, and he really hopes that Shirayuki joins their mecha corps as soon as possible and serves their country. However, Shirayuki asks him a favor. She wanted him to find the man who sold for some acorns. It was Yuta, to be clear. The man immediately recognizes him as the defective boy having a Rudia of 2. Shirayuki immediately reprimands him for being rude. The man tells her that he will instruct Elysia's intelligence division to buy Yuta back. Shirayuki is delighted because she had liked Yuta's since her first year of high school for his gentle and straightforward nature. But by the time she realized her true feelings, it was too late. She was planning to make a confession to him on the school trip, but the tables were turned. At the same time in the Belfast mansion, Lord Belfast provides them with some alarming news. The information about Nanami being a triple Highlander has been leaked, and the military has started to move in order to secure her. Poor Yuta is panicked. Belfast asks Yuta to take Nanami away from here, as the military will be soon arriving. He assures him that he will cover for them and buy them some time. Suddenly, a voice bellows from behind the closed door that the 6th Mecha Gun Battalion of the Ludawan military has arrived, and they have direct orders from the military command to detain the child who is a triple Highlander. The military asks to resolve the matter peacefully, so they request Lord Belfast to open the doors for them. But Belfast denied that there was no such child there. While Lord Belfast covers for them, Yuta and Nanami decide to leave immediately. Falma's eyes fill with tears on hearing about their departure. Meanwhile, the military men are getting impatient and decide to take strict measures. Lord Belfast thanks them for giving Falma a happy and normal life. Suddenly, a sword was thrusted through the door from the other end, and it directly pierced Lord Belfast. Everyone was shocked to see that. Falma rushes towards him, crying hysterically. Belfast apologizes to his daughter, and Falma was crying and asked him to not die. In that state, he patted Falma, then he begs Yuta to take Falma with him, as he doesn't want her to be lonely anymore. Yuta agrees readily in an instant. Belfast then looks at his daughter. He was so happy to see Falma play happily like a normal girl. He then inquired whether Falma was happy as well. She tells Belfast that she has been happy since she was born. With that, Belfast leaves for his eternal abode with a smile on his face. Soon the door was attacked again by a huge robot. Yuta drags Nanami, as they can't stay there any longer. Soon the door was broken and the knights entered the mansion. Yuta hid behind the walls and survived the surroundings. The knights were everywhere, and he couldn't pinpoint how many of them there were. Falma suggested to hide inside the mecha. Yuta stared at the mecha for a minute. Yuta asks Falma how they can get inside. Falma informs him that there is a manual entry hatch in its chest. As the soldiers spread everywhere around the Belfast state, the trio climbs up to the required spot through a ladder. When Falma lifts open the latch of the mecha's chest, he is mesmerized to find a futuristic cockpit inside. The 3 of them fit like a glove inside the cockpit, and while shutting down the latch, Yuta notices Falma holding a box. He questions her about it, and she says that her father has told her to take it with her during the time of an emergency. Yuta hushes the girls as he hears the sound of some footsteps entering the spare room. Soon, another mecha enters the spare room. Falma immediately recognizes that it's a Zophus, the mecha type of the Ludawan army. Meanwhile, the 2 Zophuses begin to chat with each other, and one of them questions the other whether he's certain he saw someone going to the spare room. The other Zophus affirms with certainty. They spot the mecha occupied by Yuta, Nanami, and Falma, and comment about its antiquity. The Zophuses decide to destroy Yuta's mecha just to be safe. The girls are stricken as one of the Zophuses is about to charge with its spear. However, no matter how hard Yuta tries to move the gears of the mecha, he's unable to move them. Miraculously, some strange kind of power surges through the mecha, and it gets activated. Yuta's vision suddenly enlarged, and he could feel the entire body of that mecha. Falma instructs Yuta to dodge the upcoming attack. Suddenly, the robot bends down. Zophus' spear gets pierced into the wall behind it, and Yuta dodges its attack successfully. The Zophus was surprised to see a piece of scrap metal move, but Yuta can't move it anymore. Falma comments that the mecha is able to move through Yuta's consciousness, so he has to visualize how he wants the mecha to move. Falma calms Yuta and Nanami and assures them together they will beat them. However, Yuta is doubtful because they don't have any guns or other weapons. Falma envisions Belfast, smiling encouragingly at her, and then instructs Yuta to just punch the Zofuses as they won't need any weapons. Hesitantly, Yuta punches those dimwits and he's shocked that they are nailed in no time. The military man controlling a Zofus is shocked that a mere punch of that antique mecha took down a D-rank armored Zofus. Even Yuta and Falma are pleasantly surprised to own such a powerful mecha. The Zofus, the mainstay of the Ludowan army, is no match for that mecha. Nanani was also thrilled to see that. In the end, Yuta decides to break through the military forces and escape. The spare room of Belfast's mansion is quiet, until Yuta's mecha's punch threw the military Zofus in pieces. Falma was amazed to see Zofus couldn't even withstand this machine's power. However, Yuta is trying to figure out a way to escape from the warehouse. As soon as he drives the mecha out of the warehouse, he is shocked to find 3 more Zofuses waiting to pounce on him. It was 3 against 1. It was evident that the 2 Zofuses were defeated. One of the Zofuses comments that the triple Highlander they are after might be riding that mecha. It then instructs others to surround that mecha and defeat it. He was surrounded and they stood in formation around him. 2 of the mechas had an axe weapon and another one had a spear. One of the Zofuses tried to attack him with an axe, but he caught it in time. Another Zofus tried to strike him with a spear, but Yuta caught its weapon with its other hand. Yuta manages to pin down 2 of the Zofuses. The third one charges towards him with a gigantic 2-headed axe. With his 2 hands tied, Yuta drives his mecha and then flings the Zofus to his front. He then uses that Zofus as a shield against other Zofuses. With that, he defeats one of them. Yuta was too strong for them. As they were spaced out, Yuta kicked the other Zofus and destroyed it. The left out, Zofus picked another sword after dropping its axe. He tries to stab the mecha with its mighty sword. Yuta wasn't able to dodge it, nor he could grab it. Suddenly, the screen went flash before him, and it can be seen that it gets stabbed by the same sword and is knocked over. Yuta heaves a sigh of relief because for the time being, the hurdles are eliminated. However, he begins to plan his next move and asks Falma where should they run to. Falma replies that if they cross the border into the commercial country of Arpeka, Ludowan will not be able to pursue them. She explains that it is only a short walk from Belfast's mansion to the border. She suggests that the streets must be empty during this time of the day, so they must escape quickly. However, Nanami is not sure that they could escape the eyes of Ludowan because the mecha really stands out. Falma replies thoughtfully that if one had a rider carrier, that shouldn't be an issue. The only civilians who would have one would be those who use mechas for construction and other similar work, though only rich people could afford that. There is an uncomfortable silence, and then Yuta breaks the ice by apologizing to Falma, as because of them she was struck by tragedy and lost her father. Falma replies in a grave tone that it wasn't Yuta's or Nanami's fault, but the fault lies with the county of Ludowan itself. She announces in sheer contempt that she will never forgive the country for what it has done to her father. Nanami supports her by saying that they must take revenge for the sake of Lord Belfast, and for that, they must defeat Ludowan. Falma thanks them both for their support and suggests they go to Arpeka to get a stronger mecha for Nanami. She also feels that Yuta's Rudia value of 2 is a sheer mistake. This is because Yuta is able to move the mecha, which even a triple Highlander couldn't move. She discusses the possibility that Yuta's Rudia value is even more amazing than they can ever imagine. Meanwhile, in a distant place, a giant bird stoops down and devours the flesh of the dead, when suddenly a huge ship steers its way towards it and frightens the gigantic bird away. A person narrates that the people of this country who brought her up are decent people by the world standards. She has been given luxurious food, a spacious and clean place of residence, and what's more, everyone seems to respect her. However, the lady doesn't require those things. Suddenly, she was referred as a vice captain, and she gets an instruction to take the 2nd platoon, surround and destroy the enemy mechas. The lady ponders that as a teacher, she simply wants to keep every one of her students safe and return to their home Earth. It is revealed that the person is none other than Minami-sensei. Soon someone calls her from a private line and says that he has something important to tell her after the battle ends. She agreed to it. She and her squad managed to move to a target location. Soon Minami reported that enemy troops had been detected up front. According to their scanners, there were 12 enemy units detected. She reports to some Captain Muzzy that the 2nd platoon is in position. The person on the other side advises all the units to pincer attack the enemy units from 3 directions. The man asks Minami to wait for his signal. Soon, the order was given to commence the attack. The enemy knights were surprised to see them. A ferocious battle takes place between the mechas. It had taken a while, but they managed to destroy every enemy mechas. Minami reports that the attack was complete. She couldn't be controlling a mecha, which uses 2 swords as its weapon. The enemy troops are told to exit their mechas and surrender. Minami was relieved to survive that battle, but then she lost her cool soon after. Her students, Oba Sakura and Taguchi Nami, come out thrusting their arms in surrender. Minami immediately recognizes them as 2 of her lost students. Captain Muzzy asks those ladies about their other troops. However, the girl doesn't know anything. Soon the mecha slashed her arm. She screamed in pain, and Captain Muzzy wanted to give them one last chance. Poor girl is tearful and says she really doesn't know about their whereabouts. Minami was speechless at that moment. Captain Muzzy felt it was shame and was ready to kill them. Minami cannot bear that gruesome torture. She stopped Captain Muzzy's attack. He was puzzled by Minami's actions. She then attacks that Captain Muzzy by herself for torturing her students. She slashed both of the mecha's arms. Captain Muzzy reminds her of her place, but she keeps on attacking and then gives up. In the end, she destroyed one of their own squad members. She sighed at her own situation. The other mecha knights were shocked to see this. She ponders that in this strange world, her students have been forced to kill each other. She was determined to not let that happen. She then asks Oba and Taguchi to climb up to her mecha, and the girls immediately recognize her as their beloved Minami-sensei. She tells them to speed up as they will escape from this place as soon as possible. However, that wretched Captain Fuzzy thrusts his sword towards Minami and warns her that he will not let her go. Minami ties up her hair and thinks that her main responsibility is to keep her students safe. She wanted to return to her original world along with them. With that resolve, she started the battle against the country knights, which bought her before in slave auction. Meanwhile, Yuta, Falma, and Nanami have finally reached the commercial city of Arpeka, whose center is rich and thriving, but the outskirts seem to be filled with slums and tenement blocks. Yuta asks Falma if she doesn't change her mind, to which she replies that she will sell the jewelry. Yuta tries to stop her in many possible ways, as it was her father Memento, but Falma is very obstinate. Soon he gives in, but warns her that something that was very precious to Lord Belfast, Falma mustn't sell it for scraps. Yuta suggests they take a piece of jewelry and ask around for the price, though how exactly do they find a trustworthy trader? A shopkeeper checks out the piece of jewelry and puts his price of 2 million gold. Another person offers them 1 million gold. One Quake tells them that the jewelry is a fake imitation, so he will pay 100,000 for that. While sitting at a cafe, they decide that they have to sell it to the merchant who offered 2 million pieces of gold. Suddenly, a voice called out to them. He had a blonde hair and wore a headband. He warns them not to sell the jewelry to that first merchant, only to regret it later. But Falma felt he was way too suspicious. The young man introduces himself as Jean. Yuta then inquired what he meant by earlier. He says that the first merchant is famous for his fast hands. He'll start off with a high price for an initial item, but then he will lower the price of the rest of the items to make it hard to buy cheap goods locally later on. That's why Jean wanted Yuta to hire him. Since there is a different price offered by each merchant they visit, he can sell the gem to another merchant for around 1.2 of the price. He'll take a 10% commission on the sale. If he can't make the sale, then he doesn't want anything in return. Yuta whispers in Falma's ears that since Yuta is not a negotiator, it will be better if they hired Jean. Soon they go inside a shop, and the man offers a total of 10 million for those jewels, as according to him, some are good and some are bad. Jean decides to leave soon after hearing that. The man make an offer of 12 million or more, but they exited the shop without selling. Soon, they visit another shop, and Jean denied to accept a price of 15 million for those jewels. Jean explains to the man that here he has a grade 10, Imelda, and the other one is an A-grade FIFA gem. The man tells Jean that those 2 gems are worth no more than 10 million. When Jean calls out the merchant's name as Limberto and says that he knows he is one of those merchants, suddenly the merchant is terrified and offers 20 million for the jewels. Jean slams down his hand and bellows at the merchant that he still doesn't understand, as he knows the value of these gems. Limberto offers 30 million for those jewels and says that it's all he can do. Soon, the transaction was finished, and Yuta is thoroughly impressed by Jean's capability and how artfully he got the triple price for those jewels. Jean asks them what they will be doing with all that money. Yuta replies that they will be buying a mecha. Jean predicts him to be a writer to his awe. Jean asks them what kind of mecha they're looking for specifically. Falma intervenes and says that she is looking for one that can be operated by someone with a Ludia value of 10,000. Jean was shocked and questions whether Yuta is a Highlander, but Falma denies that it was not Yuta. However, Jean tells them that if they are looking for the newer Highlander, Mika's, and reveal the price, A hapless Yuta is so taken aback that the cup he's holding falls from his loosened grip and smashes into pieces. The mecha will cost them 100 million gold. He shrieks so loudly that Jean has to protrude his fingers into his ears. He reasons that a Highlander's mecha is a very expensive item. Now there was no way for them to buy it. Suddenly an idea strikes Jean. He knew a way they could obtain one. He brings them to the gladiator arena, where a lot of money changes hands in the stands while the mechas fight in the pit below. Just then, two mechas were fighting with their life on the line. Jean explains in terms of gladiators, Highlanders are rare, so he really hopes that his instincts are right. Yuta was not the type to enjoy fights, but he wanted to do it to earn money. Even so, he didn't know how to fight in a coliseum, but Jean assures him that he will take care of the setup. Nanani is very much worried about Yuta's well-being. Jean was surprised as Felma already said that Yuta is not a Highlander. He inquires about Yuta's Rudia value, and the latter answers, "It's 2, but he mustn't worry about it." Jean was shocked to see the #1 idiot of that world. So when Jean comes to know that Yuta has a Rudia value of only 2, he suggests it will be better if Nanami took over. However, Yuta feels that he is the only one who can pilot a mecha and they don't have any choice. However, Jean had never heard of a mecha behaving like that before. He is worried because a person having a Rudia value of only 2 isn't able to even light up a magical lamp. Since it was a strange mecha, Yuta felt it was illogical by default. Soon the second round of the match is announced and commentator comments it is worth watching. Soon a new rider enters the stage who has won multiple matches in a row, Shinsuke Yamakura. Suddenly, it strikes Yuta that Yamakura used to be his classmate before. The young guy is about to fight an old gladiator, Altadon, who has over 500 wins to his name. Altadon vows to show him that gladiator fights are not usually based on Rudia's scores. Yuta remembers Yamakura was a quiet guy in his class, though he didn't talk to him much. But his assumptions soon turned out to be wrong. Yamakura snootily calls out to Altadon that he will make him regret his decision not to retire soon. Yuta realizes he couldn't be more wrong. Soon a fierce fight begins, with both mechas striking heavy blows to each other. So when Yamakura's mecha attacks Altadon's powerbot, the latter dodges it easily. Soon, Altadon's mecha leads out a mighty arm formed in the shape of a claw and completely clasps Yamakura's mecha. Altadon threatens that this arm can withstand the force of the most powerful mecha, and Yamakura will be crushed to death without being able to put up with the fight. Yamakura smirks at Altadon and says that he won't be able to beat him with his lousy tricks. He broke those claws with sheer strength. Altadon was shocked to see his mighty claw broken to pieces, as he thought it was impossible to crush it. Yakamura counters that it's not impossible and starts his counterattack. Yamakura, with one mighty blow, manages to pin down Altadon's mecha in no time and is finally declared a winner for the match. Yuta confirms that the person is the same, his old classmate, but it seems that he has turned over a new leaf and he was now a completely different person. The once quiet boy has turned nearly vicious. While seeing this, a shaken Jean asks Yuta to reconsider his decision to fight in the Colosseum because, by doing so, he will be putting his life at stake. However, Yuta is fully confident that he will fight in the Colosseum. No matter what it takes, he would beat them. In the end, Jean searches out a suitable opponent for Yuta's first match, and Yuta has already told him about his requirements that his opponent must have money and confidence. Later, a brusque drunkard is shown gulping down the whole bottle of wine at a seedy tavern. That drunkard is known as Master Kevin, the Red Dragon, and it can be seen that Jean has approached him as Yuta's first opponent. However, Master Kevin is not very pleased with the idea and refuses flatly. Then Jean reveals to him that he has 20 million to bet on the fight and asks if Kevin still wants to accept it. Kevin accepts it readily and warns that Jean must not regret his decision. Jean smirks and replies the same lines to him. So Yuta's first fight as a gladiator has been decided and his match would be the first one of the afternoon. Soon an old man steers out the mecha which Yuta will be using. A young woman inquires why the field depicting mecha's name is blank, to which Yuta replies that his mecha still doesn't have a name. The lady insists that the name is required because she would need it for registration. Yuta says thoughtfully that there was a white lion in an anime he liked and its name was Arleo. So he names his mecha Arleo after that white lion. Soon, Yuta's name is announced along with his mecha Arleo as the one premiering for his first fight. Jean calls out to him and says that if Yuta can pull that fight out, he must try to make it look like he won at the last moment. When Yuta asks the reason, John tells him that if they win by the skin of his teeth, it will affect the betting for the next match. The announcement continues that Yuta's opponent is a mid-ranked gladiator with 50 victories to his name. The name is Red Dragon, Kevin, along with the mecha, Holga. Soon the betting rates revealed, and Yuta's victory rate was 57, and his opponent's bet rates were only 18. Most of the people bet on Yuta, and no one knew the reason why. The battle begins as Holga begins to strike Arleo with its mighty punches, but Arleo dodges it quite easily. Kevin is taken aback by those agile movements. Yuta found Holga's movements a lot slower than Zofusa's he defeated before. He can see that Holga has opened up top, in the middle, and down below, and Yuta can easily counterattack, but he remembers Jin's instructions to make it look like he's having a hard time. Yuta thinks that he has no choice but to punch Holga and be done with it. Arleo begins to smother Holga with repeated mighty blows, and Kevin is completely caught off guard. In no time, Holga smashes to the ground, fully defeated by Arleo. Soon, the crowd cheered with an enormous sound. Jin was surprised at Yuta's strength as it was more than he had expected. Meanwhile, Yuta worries what Jin would say as he just defeated Holga. It had a broken armor, and smoke emitted from that. But to his surprise, Holga stood up and exclaimed he had let his guard down. He never thought that Yuta has so much power, but the real fight starts now. Yuta wished Kevin to hold on and fight. Kevin reinstates Holga and throws a special attack towards Arleo. Yuta wonders what technique Kevin will be using on him, so he decides he will receive it straight on. A series of attacks commence from both ends. Arleo completely nullifies Holga's special attack, and they go into a stalemate. Kevin was speechless and became worried. Soon, the broken armor, which was punched by Yuta, began to tear down. Kevin was shocked as he thought this was nearly impossible. Holga is smashed into pieces, and the referee announces the end of the match. Yuta and Arleo are declared winners. However, Yuta also screamed in shock instead of enjoying the victory. However, a sullen Jin welcomes him and reprimands him for not following his instructions. He reminds Yuta that he should have won by the skin of his teeth. However, Yuta says that he thinks he couldn't have been able to do that. Jin is worried that next time Yuta won't be able to find any challengers. Nanani shows Yuta about the loads of money they have won. She reasons that they have set aside 100,000 gold for living expenses, but otherwise, they bet everything they got on Falma's jewels on Yuta. He couldn't believe where Nanami and Falma got those trust on him. Soon a day has passed, and in a tavern, Yuta is fretting over the fact that now no one will want to fight with him anymore. Falma believes that it was too one-sided the last time, however. For Nanami, it was too amazing to watch. In the end, Yuta urges Jin to throw out some ideas instead of just drinking. Jin drops the wine bottle and suggests they have to make a plan. Later, Yuta was recognized by his old classmates, Yamakura, Haranishi, and Shibai, who were also at the tavern. Yuta inquires about their well-being. However, Haranishi haughtily says that just because they used to be classmates, it doesn't give Yuta the right to call them by their names. Yuta's face darkens when Haranishi continues that there is a world of difference between the likes of him and them. Not only that, but Yamakura has the nerve of calling Yuta trash. Haranishi brags that he is an elite with a Rudia value of 3,300, and Yuta is only a trash having a value of 2. Yuta argues with him that his Rudia's value is just a number. Haranishi tells him that in this world, only Rudia value matters, so Yuta must respect him. Nanami looks at him disapprovingly and warns Haranishi that he must not make fun of Yuta like that. Falma chips in and says they all have been friends, so why would they say such terrible things about each other? Haranishi laughs at Yuta and says sarcastically that he has become a slave raising children. Haranishi turns towards Falma and inquires why she is wearing a hood, as it is really rude to wear a hood in front of the elites. In order to insult Falma, he tries to pick on her by trying to flip over her hood against her wishes. Soon Falma's cat ears pop out along with her face, and the people around her shriek in terror at her sight. Someone comments that a half-beast is still and this infuriates Yuta to the extent that he throws a mighty punch towards Haranishi. He barks at him that he doesn't care how high his Rudia value is, but right now he has become a scum who likes to inflict pain upon people he doesn't like. Yuta adds that Haranishi is no more than trash, like he is claiming Yuta is. Jin slams the bottle on the table in order to halt the commotion, and then refers to Haranishi that he doesn't care what kind of relationship they had in the past, but now they all are gladiators, so he suggests they finish their fight in the Colosseum. Yuta is taken aback by Jin's sudden interference. Meanwhile, Haranishi thinks about who will fight a trash like Yuta. Yuta protests, and Jin replies that he has mentioned earlier that he has a secret plan, so now he will act out that plan. Jin specifies that it will be a private melee, only match that will be 3 against 1. He offers them the bet of 40 million gold, and says that he is giving them a big advantage. Haranishi and Shibai comment that with melee weapons and a 40,000 gold bet, the three of them thought Jin was throwing his money in the drain. However, Jin challenges them if they don't want to fight, then they must really be scared of Yuta. It hurts Haranishi's pride and makes it impossible to deny that challenge. Soon, the trio accepts the match terms. On the day of the battle, a thriving audience is witnessed, and soon it is announced that a new rider who has shown extraordinary talent in his previous match will be one of the opponents, with Arleo shown arriving in the arena. The announcer continues that he will fight the three gladiators using melee weapons only. Thalma questions Jin whether Arleo is holding a weapon, and the latter affirms that a 3-on-1 solely with bare fists will be overly hard. Soon, Yuta is set up against the three gladiators Yamakura, Shibai, and Haranishi, who have won 10 times in a row so far, along with their three mechas, Lanza, Idal, and Mischief. The betting rates were soon released, and Yuta had 48 times the amount. Since the weapon was made of magnite, Jin asked Yuta to hit as hard as he could, while Thalma asked him to not hurt himself. The match begins, and the three gladiators charge towards Yuta in sheer disdain. They throw insulting remarks at him as a fool. They believed Yuta's previous match was just bullshit. They asked the trash Yuta to roll over and die, but they soon shut their mouths after witnessing Yuta's power. He throws them with mighty blows one by one, and the trio is astounded. He crashes one with his weapon and the other with his mighty head. Yuta showers them with punches, and they're shot with such a speed that the mechas are taken off guard. Soon he defeated 2 mechas and destroyed them completely. Haranishi doubts Yuta has the Ludia value of 2 could do this. Haranishi realizes that he has been cheated by Yuta, and if they lose this match, then they will lose everything, and their reigns will end. However, Yuta doesn't care, as they were the ones who ignited this fight. He landed the finishing blow to Haranishi. In the end, Yuta is declared the winner, with the audience cheering wildly for him. However, Yuta is in fact feeling glum because he feels that his friends have entirely transformed after coming to Farba. He remembers the words of the man in charge when they were getting their Ludia values assessed, that the Ludia score would become the new tool to find out people's individual worth as human beings. Yuta wonders if the same thing has happened to all members of his class. After placing the mecha, Yuta exited it. He was greeted by Nanami and Thalma warmly. With that, he vows to himself that he won't become like his friends. Please like and subscribe to know Yuta's future endeavors.